My first impressions were seeing a new country. Obviously it's far from home and very different. Hearing the language was a challenge. I understand Spanish, but the Argentinian accent is challenging, so that was an interesting first impression. I also was stricken by the poverty there. It was a lot simpler and a little more closed than I was expecting. People tend to keep to themselves.
My first impression of when we got there, the place was very poor, a lot of poverty, no heat in most of the homes, and definitely no air. I was told they had just been coming out of slavery, so everything was just to a minimal, just what they needed to survive. Roads had been paved like many years ago, so by the time we went there, they weren't paved or anything, not very many cars. But everybody had a cell phone.
For me, being up in northwestern Argentina, my first impressions were still of how much poverty there was. When you're out in these small rural areas, you have houses that are just made out of mud bricks, and the people live very simply. Their house might have a couple of rooms, 2-3 rooms, and the roads tend to be dirt. So I think for me, the biggest impression was the poverty that I saw.
First, we linked up with the organization Crew, and we went out as teams. I was on a team of 10, and we essentially camped out in the floor of a small church, and we had daily projects. The Crew was very organized, and we went out on the streets, whether it was going to a senior housing or going to the public square and talking with people, playing music, sharing mate, the local tea, inviting people to dinners, handing out donations, and speaking the gospel.
I was doing ministry when we got there. I would go out to the street with the kids. We would pray on the streets so that God would open up the doors and we would be able to touch some lives. People were very, very reserved, so we would speak to them, and being that I was older and a woman, I connected with the women very well. We did a lot of ministry. We went to the nursing home. We did ministry there. We constantly were on our feet walking from at least 10 a.m. to like 9 p.m., walking around, just talking to anybody. At nighttime, we'd take coffee and to give out coffee. We would take meals and pass out meals. We'd give our cards. We went to church. I was able to share my testimony with them, and throughout the city I was able to share parts of my testimony with women, so that we would be able to bond and have that understanding, and it worked out really, really well.
For the team Zach and I were working on, we went up to a little town called Pampichuela in the province of Jujuy. And it takes about a day from Salta to actually make your way there. Like you said, very small town, about 150 people, and this was the first time that this missions organization had gone there. So it was a lot of work building from the ground up. 10 years ago, evangelicals would have been driven out with machetes, they told us. It's not that bad now, but the people tended to be closed. There's a couple, 2-3 people who are there full-time or part-time, and they'll carry on our work. But a lot of our ministry was just reaching out to people, building relationships, beginning to talk to them about Christ. For example, we had what I would call a soccer ministry. We got to know a lot of the younger guys in the town just by playing soccer with them.
My greatest takeaway was just how powerful it can be to be in a group of focused individuals, I guess a focused team, led by the Spirit and doing God's work. It's very powerful to see people respond to that, embrace the Word, feeling a sense of oneness with God.
My greatest takeaway was to be able to bring God's Word and share it. And also, when I met the other crew members, they were just so humble and full of love, and we were praying and singing, and they became my family. And I love each and every one of them. They just really came into my heart at how young they were and the love that they had for God. And it was just all of us as a family uniting and praying and talking about God, sharing our testimonies. There was just so much love and joy and peace there with us.
I think my greatest takeaway was that that God was with us. When we arrived in Buenos Aires, we had to then move from one airport to another and to fly up to Salta. But our luggage, one suitcase, of course the one with all the warm clothes, was lost. And so the church was praying for that, thank goodness. I thought that suitcase is never going to get there in time, and we're moving around so much for the next several days that it would never catch up with us. But sure enough, after a short walking tour of Buenos Aires, there it was waiting for us. And so, I mean, we saw other evidence too, just in the people that we talked to, but in the conversations that we had. But for me, that was a takeaway, that God was with us, was we were on mission with Him.
What I would want people to know about this mission trip is that it's important to get out. You know, sometimes your sphere is just your family or your small community. It's good to get outside that community and push your boundaries of comfort and experience to embrace what God's mission is, and to joyfully do what Jesus did in His mission and share the Word. And first you think of it as very important for the people you're ministering to, but I found it was very enlightening in myself, in growth and becoming closer to God.
What I want other people to know is that it is a must for everybody in their lifetime, at least once, to experience what the rest of the world does experience. It's not like the States where we have an abundance of everything. And you look at these other people living in poverty. If they have 2 pairs of pants, they're really happy with it. Their meals were small meals, and what we shared, we were able to share with everybody, and we ate well, not meat in every meal, but we were full. And going out there and living a life the way they live is so humbling, and it changes your life. It's life-changing.
I think I'd want people to know, when they think about this missions trip, that it's about God and people, because, you know, we're on mission with God. You know, this is His work. He's the one setting things up, working it out for the people that we're going to talk to. And it's about the people you're trying to serve. In this town, there was 150 people, of which 4 were Christians. So we tried to encourage them. We tried to reach out to other Christians. But for me, just as importantly, were the people we served with, that our teammates that were from Chile, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, and of course us from the United States. So it was about them too, serving them, working alongside them.
So another thing I was able to get into was using my individual skills coming from the construction and handyman background to help repair the church that we were staying in. It was in serious disrepair, water leaks, other things like that. So being able to help the community in that way and in that area.
You don't do a project like this without a lot of work from a lot of people. So I think I would like to say thank you to the church for all the fundraisers, for all the support, everyone who helped with the fundraisers, everybody who purchased things at the fundraisers, Michelle Pearl, who did a lot of our admin work for us, and just Nick for announcing that we were having a project to Argentina and giving me that little extra push.